Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Leadership and Performance Coaching webinar. So just a quick housekeeping item here. This is GoToWebinar. So you will see on your screen, there's a little control panel and there's a question box. So as questions arise, feel free to go ahead and write them in the question box. And at the end of the session, we will have time for Q&A. All right, I see there's a few more joining us now. So welcome, this is the Leadership and Performance Coaching webinar. The topic today is it's a 21st century leadership imperative, leadership and performance coaching. I'm Erin Hutchins, and I also have Mike Hutchins here with me today.
Hi.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. I am a PCC, which in the coaching world means Professional Certified Coach. I'm also an executive coach and a coach trainer. I've trained over 1,500 individuals to become certified coaches. I've also done a lot of work in organizations, either helping people become more coach-like as leaders or training them in a formal coaching program, as well as other leadership development initiatives.
Yeah, so Mike Hutchins, my background, also a professional certified coach, originally trained as a CPA, as an accountant, doing management consulting. So I have 20 years of management consulting experience doing large organizational change programs, focusing on leading change, program management, that sort of thing.
Okay, a little bit about ACT Leadership. So ACT stands for Assess, Coach, Train. So that's what we do. And how we do it is through helping individuals, teams, organizations become more aware so they can make informed, conscious choices that ultimately lead to more transformative results. We have done a lot of work with the federal government, working throughout different agencies, also organizations, where we primarily train people to become coaches or more coach-like, or we're helping them to expand their range as a leader. So that's a little bit about ACT. This program is also our program. We are in collaboration with Brown University, the School of Professional Studies, where we are offering our leadership and performance coaching program.
Yeah, and we also do leadership coaching. We do one-on-one coaching. We do 360s on executive master's programs with Brown.
Yep. You'll see here on the left-hand corner that this program that we're going to be talking about today is accredited through the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, which is one of the global governing bodies of coaching. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to talk a little bit about why coaching and why it's so hot right now and why it is a 21st century leadership imperative. We're going to talk then more about the benefits to you, to your teams, and also to organizations, the benefits of coaching. We'll then talk about helping to define coaching. So what does coaching really mean? And we'll talk more about the leadership and performance coaching program. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Good. So let's get started with setting some context. So let's look at the sort of the leadership landscape that we see out there right now. So, you'll be familiar with much of what you see here, the demand for results, hitting your numbers. There's that, certainly in the commercial sector, there's that continuous demand for results and leading to a lot of the sort of the short-termist thinking, and the impact on employee development is that it often takes the back burner. So leaders are brought in with mandates, 3 years to turn an organization around. And again, what we see is it just creates a lot of complexity, creates a lot of confusion. We have constant reorgs, which sort of end up with a lot of often indecipherable matrixized organization charts. And the impact that has on the workforce is, well, it's clear to see with the annual employee disengagement scores of around 70%. So we see a younger generation that's coming in, a millennial population, that's looking for real meaning and purpose and fulfillment in their roles. And for many, they're not getting that. You know, they're asking questions of their managers and leaders, and they're not really feeling like they're being listened to at a deeper level. And as a consequence, many of them are, you know, moving on, moving around. And so, you know, I think we're all familiar with the fact that this younger generation is definitely moving around much more. So, yeah, and we're also seeing a lot of, I think, with enabling technology, we're seeing, you know, much more fickleness with customers. So if they're not getting what they want, if they're not getting instant responses, then they go somewhere else. So again, it's challenging, how agile is your organization and responsive is it to the needs of the employees and the customers? So one of the benefits that we see, again, when we coach senior executives, or we provide team coaching, or people that go through our program, is, you know, when they can be more coach-like, when they can use the coach approach, is they can really integrate that into their leadership, overall leadership. So it gives them more range, more agility to know how to respond and know when to respond to different situations. It's like they can flex their style to what's needed in any given moment. So it sort of creates more of a multi-dimensional leader. We also see that leaders have greater self-awareness through going through such a program. They have greater emotional intelligence. They're more responsible with their emotions. They have a greater awareness of what is it that is their stress triggers, what is it that causes them to go into reactive, and what's the impact that that has on their performance, what's the impact that has on the people around them, so they can develop strategies to shift back into being more creative and being more effective.
So one of the things that we know about coach-like leaders is that they're really good with knowing what type of questions to ask. So our default tendency is to go into problem solving, wanting to give advice, and coach-like leaders are looking for what are the questions that they can ask to help another person think more critically, you know, to really help them do their own thinking so they can therefore then come up with their own solution. So we're looking at, you know, what questions, how questions that are helping the light bulbs go off in the other person's head. And also, you know, being a coach-like leader, the coach-like leader has a broader perspective. So they're able to see challenges, situations, issues, whatever it might be, from many different perspectives. And then therefore help others be able to broaden their perspectives and help them not so see things so black and white, but actually expand how they're seeing people or their issues. And then there's active listening on here. So active listening is a big thing right now where, you know, a lot of times we listen for what somebody just said. And the coach-like leader can really tune in and listen to how is it being said. So, you know, another default tendency is to go into what we call a self-referential mode. You know, so when we're listening, we have a tendency to refer back to ourselves. So in coaching, we help you become more aware of our tendency to default back to ourselves and respond from that place, and choose a different way to respond. Choose to really respond from a place of, you know, how is it being said? What is the key information that is important?
So yeah, so a few more benefits, certainly to the organization. You know, there's this sort of duality of, you know, how can leaders achieve results and stay in relationship with their workforce? And a lot of research has been done, Zenger and Folkman, a study of 44,000 employees, around exploring, like, how can you simultaneously, you know, hit those quarterly numbers, you know, achieve the short-term focus, but also develop people at the same time. And what we find, again, with a coach-like leader, is that ability to, because they create so much safety and trust, they can have authentic conversations. So, you know, they can give and receive feedback in the moment, and really just, again, being able to connect with employees so they can get things done at the same time. So what we find is that this leads to a lot more employee retention. So again, the employee feels more seen, more heard, and ultimately leads to greater performance. We see that the coach-like leader has a greater awareness of the emotional pulse of the organization. They can read, what is really going on in this organization, and so it's easier for them to shift to the culture that is needed, the desired culture, right? They have the tools to be able to, because they have the employee, the workforce with them, so it's easy to enable that change. So leading change becomes a lot easier. They're able to think more critically and creatively at the same time. One of the other key benefits is client relationships and client retention. So sort of similar to employees, it's being able to ask questions differently, listen actively, and listen, more with their sensing around what's really going on with this customer. What is it that they really need, so that they can ultimately provide a better solution, a better product for them.
Right. So ultimately what we're helping others to do is, how do we make more time for critical thinking in teams and organizations, and also create an environment of innovation, and really be able to focus there versus focus on some of the reactive tendencies that go on in teams and organizations. Okay, so let's keep going here. So on this slide, we've attempted to demonstrate a typical employee interaction. So here we have a leader, we have an employee, and then we have something called a topic. And the way that we're defining a topic here is some sort of problem or challenge or goal that someone in the organization might be facing. So typically what we see happen is a leader will, when they're with an employee, whether that is a peer, it could be a direct report, or somebody in the organization, typically when there's a challenge or a problem that arises, the leader will focus on trying to problem solve or give advice. So they're really focused on the topic. So it might look like them saying, oh, have you tried this? Did you speak to so-and-so? You should try. I need you to do this. Or I had a similar situation when this happened. So again, it's our default tendency. We tend to default that way. So the conversation here could look a little bit more like the leader directing or reassuring the employee that they're talking to.
Yeah, so not a lot of curiosity in this style of conversation. And going back to that, quarterly returns and the short-termist sort of viewpoint is, it's very much around, what are we going to do immediately when there's a problem? What are we going to do, rather than being curious around, why didn't that work, and what might it look differently next time?
So here is a coach-like conversation or coaching conversation. So in a coach-like conversation, the leader is really focused on the employee's relationship to the topic or to the issue or challenge or to the goal that they have. So they're focused on their relationship to it. So what that means is how is that person perceiving their issue? What's the lens they're looking through? What's important to them about that issue or challenge? So they're really looking at getting to what's underneath. Therefore, the ultimate goal is to get to root cause. So in future, we can eliminate the symptoms of the problem.
So the leader really is helping the employee think it through for themselves, so that they can reduce the dependency on that leader. So rather than just telling them, in the previous example, it's really sort of working methodically through, systematically through a method that enables the employee to be able to become much more resourceful in themselves in solving the problem. So the light bulb goes off for the employee, not for the leader.
Yeah, so the leader is really, as a coach-like leader, they're coming from a coach-like mindset. So they're coming from a place of curiosity. They're coming from a place of really wanting to help that person come up with and find their own solution. As Mike said, decreasing the dependency on that leader. So it's, a lot of times we see leaders or individuals come with agendas, right? So in the coach-like mindset, we're looking at how do we become greater aware of our agendas that we might be holding for people, so we don't start leading from that place.
Yeah, and the neuroscience behind this, with MRI scanning, is looking at when these different conversations happen, certainly when there's more of a mentoring, directing conversation, there is not a lot of activity in the employee's brain. It's almost like a child, like go do this, go do that. And we're not seeing growth, we're not seeing development, we're not seeing new neural connections that are being made. Whereas in this conversation, it's almost like a firework display that's going on in the brain, where again, sort of like what wires together fires together. So we see that there is really neural development that happens. New neural circuitry is created through having this style of conversation.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about coaching now. And if you have any questions that are starting to arise for you, feel free to write them in the question box, and we'll get to them at the end. So let's talk a little bit about how we're defining coaching. So we are looking at coaching as through a partnership. So ultimately what you're doing is you're partnering with another person in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So what that really means is you're partnering with someone to help them find their own solution. So, coaches and coach-like leaders honor that that person is the expert in his or her life and work, and that they're creative and resourceful to come up and find their own solution. So if you think about that, if you're holding that as a mindset to really look at people as creative and resourceful, then your job as a coach-like leader, as a coach, is to really elicit the answers from the other person. Help them think more critically, think more deeply about how do they ultimately come up with their own solution. And the reason why we want to do that is ultimately that person owns their solution, right? So it creates a high level of accountability and responsibility.
So, we check in with students once they've completed the program and ask, like, how have you applied the skills, the concepts that you learned when you became a certified coach? And what we find is we've got sort of 7 main categories here. The first one being problem solving. And, the thing we hear here is, a very traditional mechanistic way of looking at problems is, that it was a product default or something like that. It was a thing that caused the problem. And often what we know is that really it was somebody's mindset, or it was a communication issue. So what coach-like conversations enable is the safety and trust to be able to have a difficult conversation and say, look, really the root cause of the problem here is, and be really clear on it could be that a human issue. So facilitation, again, facilitators, people that facilitate, they're better at reading the room. Similarly with presentations, it's knowing how to engage an audience, how to keep their energy up. And then, also how to manage up. So the ability to have bidirectional feedback, so the senior leaders have the courage to be able to say, listen, I want to receive feedback from you as well as giving you feedback. Being a better mentor it's almost like earning the right through listening to be able to give better quality advice, right? So when you are giving advice, the quality of that is much better because you've really listened and understood before just defaulting into here's what I would do. And leading change is sort of similar to facilitation and presentations. It's really understanding the organization, really understanding the what's in it for me, for employees. And then finally, career development, having performance developmental conversations and really just connecting with the person and knowing what's needed for them based around their own values.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our program. So this is the Leadership and Performance Coaching Certification that's being held at Brown University. We have an upcoming program that's kicking off in the spring and March time frame, and the details are on the Brown website and on our website, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the overall program, so it's a 6-month program, and it's held at the Brown University campus. The program is really targeted to people who are working professionals that have a minimum of 5 years experience in education or training or some professional experience. So this program is really contextualized and tailored to the working professional, ultimately because we want them to use it in their working environment, whether they are an engineer or a HR business partner or a leader within the organization or even a consultant. So as we go to the next slide, this also just gives you an overview of the different components of the program. So there's 3 in-person modules that are on campus, and here are the dates. There's also some virtual calls that you would need to attend, as well as individual calls. So the program has been designed essentially for the working professional. We feel that it is a good mixture of in-person scheduled training as well as virtual training. In Module 1, we're really focused on coaching leadership foundations, so it's very foundational. In Module 2, we're looking at how do you help people shift from a reactive state into a creative one. So a lot of this is based upon adult development theories. It's based upon the research that has been done around how 75% of leaders show up in a reactive state. And how do we help them become more aware so they can shift into a more creative stance? So we're looking at self-limiting beliefs, values, what's getting in the way of optimizing effectiveness and performance here. And then Module 3, we're looking at how do you work with some more emotionally charged issues like resistance, for example. When you face resistance within your team or organization or with people, how do you work with resistance? And then we're also looking at in this module, how do we expand your range as a leader and as a coach so that you can work with all types of different leadership styles. And then also we're integrating in this module. So just to sum up this program, it's 6 months. There's 3 in-person modules that are 3 days each. The dates are on here for spring. We are enrolling now for the spring program. And let's go to the next slide here. This is just a little bit more about us. And on the next slide here, you can see that there is a link here to the application if you're interested in applying to the program. So we have a few more minutes now. Let's just take a minute to pause, and we're curious about what questions you have for us about coaching or about the program. And go ahead and type them in the question box, please.
So we have a question: what makes your program different to other programs? So certainly our program is focused on leadership and performance. So we're really looking at what is it that sustains a leader in a highly performing state at all times. So we really hone in on, what are the triggers that send them into a reactive? Again, everything's contextualized around different organizational challenges that we see. And so we're really working with senior working professionals, and we're really focused a lot around the neuroscience. And Erin already mentioned some of the research, but we bring a lot of the research that's been done around leadership effectiveness. Like, what is it that makes an effective leader? And so we weave that into the program. We look at, how do you, when you become a leadership and performance or an executive coach, how do you coach different personality styles? How do you, a lot of the application around, like to that previous slide, like leading change, mentoring, how do you apply the coach-like skills in these different organizational contexts?
Okay, great. Another question here. Does the program result in any certification? Yes. So if you attend the program in its full entirety, so you go through all the program components, you will receive a certification of completion of the Leadership and Performance Certification Program. If you then choose to become accredited as a coach and you want a formal accreditation through the International Coaching Federation, you can also apply for that accreditation because this is an approved program through the ICF. Hopefully that answers your question.
Another question, what can I call myself once I've completed? So I think Erin sort of answered that. Once you've completed our program, you can call yourself a leadership and performance coach. Once you have the 100 hours, you can then go through the International Coaching Federation and become an associate certified coach as well. So you have that credential. And then you obviously say you did the program through ACT and Brown. Next question, when are subsequent sessions held after the initial entry points? Is there flexibility in attendance for different times of subsequent meeting?
I think we're going to try to answer that question, and if we don't, please let us know again in the comment box here. So there are 3 in-person sessions that are required on campus, and they're roughly about a month apart from each other, and they're mandatory sessions to attend in person. And then in between the 3 in-person modules, there will be virtual calls to attend that are approximately 1 hour each. And then there's also individual calls where we help really mentor you and help you grow as a coach on those calls. And please do let us know if we didn't answer that, or if you had, if you were curious about something else.
Another question, what evidence do you have to prove your program works? We do regular check-ins with the federal government. We have up to 800 people that we're putting through the program. So we are doing research, and we are doing surveys with leaders that have completed the program to assess the change and where that's happened. So a lot of the results that we have from that are specifically in application. So, where we showed that slide around mentoring and those kind of things, those are the areas where we're seeing the change.
Another question here. Who are the credible leaders that have been in the program? So we have worked primarily with, Mike just mentioned, we do a lot of work with the federal government where we have senior executives that are training to be coach-like. So they're really looking at how do they incorporate this into their leadership. We work with a lot of private organizations, Fortune 100 companies that are putting, different levels in as far as mid-level management all the way up to senior leadership. They're wanting skills to be more coach-like because they're recognizing that it's a core competency of leadership development. And in our program at Brown here, we're really looking for, so when we receive applications, we're looking for people that have work experience and that they're looking for a way to grow as a leader and a way to incorporate and integrate their what they're going to learn in the program into their leadership style and in their organization. Or, we might have a consultant who wants to add coaching to another tool in their toolkit, and they're looking for how can they have different kind of conversations with one-on-one conversations, or help facilitate team discussions, or whatever, or cultural change as well. Okay, so it looks like that we are at 12:30 right now. We thank you for attending. If you would like more information about the program, please contact Katie Johnson. She's our program manager, and she'd be happy to answer any more of your questions. If you are interested in applying for the spring cohort, the link is here. We would welcome your application, and please do let us know in your application if you attended the webinar.
Yeah, and we will be doing more of these, and we will have, specific industry or market sector focuses, and a lot of that will be based on previous students sharing some of their experiences of how they have applied the skills and their experiences in their organizations. So stay tuned for more specific, targeted webinars.